Hello, everybody. Happy Friday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We've got another Seahawks video to get to today, but it's not necessarily the one that a lot of people may have been expecting today. I have made the decision to temporarily retire the Who Seahawks Fans Should Be Rooting For series of videos that I usually posted every Friday because recent events have made things very binary for the Seattle Seahawks and their fans in terms of who we should be rooting for. And at this point, to sit here and say we should get invested in things like whether or not the Vikings win, or whether or not the Cardinals win, or the Lions win, or the Saints win, I just don't think it's very productive at this point, because we know what matters at this point, and it's a pretty short list of things that matter for these Seahawks. I can describe it in a couple of minutes in this video. If the Seattle Seahawks win out, they will win the division. If they do not win out, they won't. If the Seahawks win the division, the only thing that can change is whether or not they get the 2 seed or the 3 seed. The game that will determine that almost certainly is Green Bay playing the Tennessee Titans in, I believe, week 16. If the Titans win, we can get the 2 seed. If the Packers win, we're probably almost certainly actually not going to get the 2 seed and we're going to get the 3 seed. If the Seahawks lose a game in the next 4 weeks and end up claiming a wild card spot, the only variable is whether or not we get the 5 seed or the 6 seed. Because we beat Minnesota, and I truly believe that Arizona is out of it, so it's either the Seahawks or the Bucks for the 5 seed. So if we lose a game and the Bucks win out, I'm pretty sure the Buccaneers will claim the 5 seed. So that's really the only thing to watch, whether or not Tampa Bay wins out or loses a game. And that's really all that matters for these Seahawks. The result of 2 or 3 games outside of the Seahawks schedule will completely determine our playoff seeding, because there's no 1 seed anymore. That's pretty much impossible. It's pretty much impossible for us to fall behind the Vikings because we beat the Vikings head-to-head. So to me, that's all there is to watch for. So I'm not going to be making a bunch of videos anymore about who we should be rooting for. It all comes down to, do the Seahawks win out or not? Do the Packers lose to the Titans? And do the Buccaneers win out, or do they lose another game? So in this video, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a look at the future to very near present of the Seattle Seahawks offensive line. So this is going to be kind of a preview of videos I'm planning to make during the entire offseason, because just because the offseason hits doesn't mean I'm going to stop making Seahawks videos. When the offseason hits, I'm going to be making a lot of videos about what the Seahawks need to do to put themselves in good position in 2021, because obviously the NFL season never really stops. True fans know what I'm talking about. So I want to take a look at 2 players on this offensive line, and I am talking about the future, but it is possible, it is not inconceivable that I'm going to be talking about the future as in a couple of weeks from now, because we don't know. We are, in some respects, balancing on the edge of a knife, the razor's edge, if you will, when it comes to this offensive line. Now, Ethan Posick has had a really nice season at center for us. I really like what he's done. So that position, assuming we bring back Posick, which right now I do assume, is good. Damian Lewis looks like he's going to be a Pro Bowler in the future at right guard, so we've got that locked up well. And then you have Brandon Shell, who has played quite well at right tackle and is under contract for at least 1 more year, so I have every reason to believe that side of the offensive line, the right side of that offensive line, is good. So we're going to be talking about the left side today, and we're going to be talking about some options going forward for the Seahawks. First, let's take a look at the players that we have on the left side of the offensive line so I can explain to you why this is so important. Dwayne Brown, starting left tackle. One of the best offensive linemen in Seahawks history, even though he's only been here for less than 4 years. One of the best moves that Pete Carroll and John Schneider made in the second half of their reign over football decisions in Seattle, to trade for him from Houston. So far this year, Dwayne Brown has scored a Pro Football Focus grade of 88.1, which is one of the best marks for any left tackle in football. He is playing at a Pro Bowl level. I don't know if he's going to make it, but he's playing at that level. However, before the 2021 NFL season starts, he will turn 36. He already has knee problems. I believe it is overwhelmingly likely that Dwayne Brown retires this offseason. And if he does not, if he decides to run it back in 2021 for the last year of his contract, which, by the way, it's a fat contract too, something to consider. If he decides to run it back, we can't completely depend on him because he's already got a bad knee. So to me, we need to start thinking about the future at this position. And the future could be in a couple weeks because, again, the dude already has knee issues. You can't just assume he's going to be able to play these last 2 months without incident. So it's possible the future is going to be here sooner than anybody wants. And the next player is Mike Iupati, our starting left guard for most of this season. Now, Mike Iupati, in his career, has been a very good guard, and this year has really not been an exception. He's got a Pro Football Focus grade of 74 almost, which marks him as a quality starting guard. One of the better guards in the league, maybe. At least he's certainly not bad. He's well above average, probably a little better than good. But we all know the issues with Mike Iupati. Can't stay healthy. He's never been able to stay healthy, but in his old age, I know he's only 33 and a half, but as far as Mike Iupati's body is concerned, he may as well be 40 years old. The dude is just struggling to keep it together. He's clearly held together by duct tape and baling wire at this point, and we can't count on him playing next week, let alone next year. I firmly believe that Mike Iupati will retire this offseason. He's done all he can in this league. I don't see him sticking around just to take another major injury next year, maybe. He's been very lucky that in his 2 years in Seattle, he's avoided major injury and has only had a series of minor injuries. So even if he did come back, we could not depend on him. So that leaves the Seahawks with a big hole on the entire left side of their offensive line. Even if these guys come back in 2021, they cannot be relied on the same way that we rely on them right now. So I'm going to make this video today is going to be about how we can replace them. It's going to be kind of a look to the future with the possibility that the things that I say coming into play in the next couple weeks. So first, let's take a look at the cleanest option, the most preferable option that I think everybody who roots for this team will hope happens. But I don't think this is very likely. Let's talk about replacing Dwayne Brown and Mike Iupati in-house. So let's take a look at the depth chart right now and see what we have that could replace Dwayne Brown right now. So starting with Dwayne Brown, obviously we know that Cedric O is not going to be that guy. The dude is just awful. The dude is going to be out of here, God willing, in 2021. So it's not him. So you really only have two options, and one of them is very, very fringe. The first is Jamarco Jones. Now, Jamarco Jones had to play for Dwayne Brown last year against Arizona in Week 16, and he gave up 4 sacks to Chandler Jones. So right then and there, that kind of killed my confidence in Jamarco Jones as a future left tackle for this franchise. However, it has to be said that he got the start at right tackle against the Giants and actually played pretty well. Did not play bad at all. Now, there's a huge difference between right tackle and left tackle, and I still say that Jamarco Jones is more likely going to be a guard in his NFL future. I think he's probably a little better at that, and that's probably something that he can more easily handle. But Jamarco Jones is a young player. He did miss his rookie season to a major injury. It is possible he can develop into a quality left tackle, so I can't rule it out, but I'm very skeptical on that. And the other option that I see right now is Chad Wheeler, who got cooked at right tackle against the Giants when he came in for the injured Jamarco Jones. However, Chad Wheeler is a very young player. That was his first real NFL action. What do you expect? And we've kept him on the practice squad for a couple years. So Chad Wheeler, it's a possibility, but not a very likely one. Now, as for replacing Mike Iupati in-house, we have a few options. I think all of them have some credibility to them. The first, and in my opinion, currently most likely, is Jordan Simmons, because Jordan Simmons has come in for Mike Iupati several times this year when Iupati's gotten hurt. So we already see Jordan Simmons as at least being the next man up right now. Now, Jordan Simmons, his Pro Football Focus grade is like 52, so Pro Football Focus doesn't like him very much. What I've seen from Jordan Simmons as an NFL player, as a guard, is he's actually a very good pass protector, but not very good in run blocking. And that's a little bit of an issue when you're talking about an interior offensive lineman. So whether or not Jordan Simmons can start at left guard for us going forward kind of comes down to the question of, do we want to be a pass-first team, or do we want to feature the running game a little bit more? Do we want to be an outside running team or an inside running team? So it kind of depends on what we prioritize. The next guy I see is possibly replacing Iupati would be Philip Haynes. He had the opportunity to play some this season, but he got hurt early on, and we never really got to see him this year. I don't think he's played a snap on the offensive line this year. I liked what I saw from Phil Haynes against Green Bay last year in the playoffs, but odds are good that that injury has set him back significantly, and who knows if he's ever going to get his chance over an extended period of time at this point. We may just decide to move on from Phil Haynes before he even gets a chance. And the third option is returning to Jamarco Jones. I like him better as a guard than I do as a tackle right now. I think that's better for his skill set. I think he's proven to be better at it. So Jamarco Jones is another option to replace Mike Iupati long term. I think it's a reasonable option to consider. I'm not extremely excited about it, but I have seen some decent things from Jamarco Jones so far. So if you want to keep it in-house, if you don't want to spend any money or draft capital on a solution for this, those are your options. Obviously, Jamarco Jones cannot be in two places at once, so if you want him to replace Dwayne Brown, you can't have him replace Mike Iupati, and vice versa. But let's move on to some of the more interesting things that could happen to the Seahawks' left side of their offensive line going forward. So let's take a look at 2021 free agency. Who are some players who are going to be available in 2021 free agency that could replace Dwayne Brown? Let's start with Dwayne Brown. There are a few options here that I like. This is a comprehensive list of every single tackle that's important, but every single tackle who's going to be available as a free agent in 2021's free agency period. And as you can see, there are a lot of options here, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the garbage ones, the ones that are just flyers, pipe dreams, the ones that nobody would get excited about, the ones with forgettable players who have never proven anything in the NFL. I'm going to focus on three guys that would really actually kind of get me excited, that would make me think, wow, we are replacing Dwayne Brown with a dude who at least has a chance to really fill his shoes. So if you go down this list, the first name you come to is kind of the best and most prolific left tackle in this free agency period. Trent Williams, currently a 49er, 33 years old, making a bunch of money this year, playing very well in San Francisco, playing extremely well for the 49ers. And if you take a look at what Spotrac has projected for Trent Williams as a free agency contract, we're talking 3 years and $55 million. Now, Spotrac has been wrong before. They've been very wrong. They projected like $80 million for Jackson Hargrave last year. I don't even think he got half that. However, it makes a lot of sense. Trent Williams is a 7-time Pro Bowler. He's a blue chip talent. He is getting old, but that just makes it more likely he's going to want to get paid while he can. So, Trent Williams, phenomenal player still, probably has a couple years left at a high level. Based on what we're seeing from him as a 49er this year, he can play. And with the 49ers being in the state that they're currently in, we don't know if they're going to keep him or not. It is possible they let him go. They don't want to pay this much money to one player when they're doing a semi-rebuild potentially anyway. They might be getting a new quarterback. They might just want to move on to the next left tackle. So Trent Williams is probably the highest ceiling option that we could get to replace Dwayne Brown. The next name I want to talk about is somebody who would cost a little bit less and has more of a future in the NFL. This is Cam Robinson. Cam Robinson is a blue chipper. He went in the second round a few years ago. He's never totally lived up to it, however. He's been anywhere from average to good in his NFL career. He is playing on a team that has never had a really good quarterback or a really good offense in general, really. But he's 25 years old. And Spotrac projects that he's going to get a 4-year, $46 million contract. Again, Spotrac is often very wrong. I think they projected like $50 million for Ifedi, and he got $1 million. I mean, you can't make that stuff up, but for the most part, they're making assumptions based off pretty reliable data. Cam Robinson is somebody that I talked about at the trade deadline as a potential acquisition for the Seahawks as a future replacement for Dwayne Brown. I think this offseason it might be a decent idea to go get him and then count on Mike Solari to be able to whip him into shape a little bit. So Cam Robinson would be an intriguing option if you want to sign a left tackle in free agency who has a chance to be your dude for the next 6 to 8 years. I'm not in love with him, but I feel like there's potential there. He was clearly very good in college. He was considered a blue chipper coming out of college. I wanted him in the first round to a certain extent back in 2017. And I think this is a very credible option to replace Dwayne Brown in 2021. And the last name I want to go over, this one's much less appealing and interesting, admittedly. This is somebody who I would just kind of shrug my shoulders about. But he might be a decent stopgap. Cameron Fleming of the New York Giants. He's middle-aged as far as NFL players go. He's not a great player by any stretch. He's been okay so far this year for the Giants. His Pro Football Focus grade is a little below 60, I believe. He's not on a big contract right now. We're talking 1 year, $3.5 million. I imagine his next contract would not be particularly longer than that. The Giants recently spent a lot of draft capital on their tackles. They spent the 4th overall pick on Andrew Thomas, and then they spent another draft pick on Matt Pert. So they might just want to shuffle Matt Pert in there next year and move on from Cameron Fleming. He's playing right tackle this year, but he's listed as a swing tackle, so it seems like he's capable of playing both. I would certainly not be crazy about this option, but it would be a reasonable, cheap option to stock the left tackle position for a year or two while you figure out what you want to do in the long term. So those are the 3 guys that I really like in the left tackle free agency list. If you look at the rest of these names, Russell Okung, I don't see it. I don't think he's that great anymore. He's too injury prone. Villanueva also kind of getting up there. Not a terrible idea for a 1-year flyer maybe, but I wouldn't be excited about. Jason Peters is going to be 40. Cameron Irving is replacement level or slightly above it in my opinion. You can go down the list and you can probably find 1 or 2 other names that might intrigue you, but I'm not really seeing too much else in this list other than what I just went over. So those are the tackles in free agency. Now let's do Mike Iupati. Who could we get in free agency in 2021 to replace Mike Iupati at starting left guard? Well, there are 2 very appealing and, shall I say, sexy options at the very top of the free agency list in the 2021 offseason. The first is a guy who I really liked in 2020 as well, Brandon Scherff of the Washington Now football team. This is a bona fide blue chipper. He went in the top 5 in 2015. He's been a phenomenal guard for the then Redskins Now football team. He's 28 years old. He was due a big contract last year, but then he got franchise tagged and ended up playing for like $15 million, a 1-year $15 million deal this year. And, well, I don't think they'll be franchise tagging him again. So he's likely to hit the free agent market this offseason. And you are looking at forking over about $11 million a year. Spotrac estimates his market value at about 4 years and $44 million, which is sizable for a left guard. But it's something I would certainly consider doing because I believe he is very good. I believe he's one of the best actually guards in the league. So this is definitely something that you might want to do if you're willing to invest a big chunk of change into the guard spot. So this is probably the sexiest option. The other sexy option would be Joe Thuney of the New England Patriots. He's in a somewhat similar position to Brandon Scherff, but he's a little younger, and he might actually be a little bit better, or at least he's playing better right now. That New England offensive line, generally speaking, has been quite good this year. It's been quite good in the past. And Joe Thuney is expected to sign a $70 million contract this offseason by Spotrac. Now, I doubt very much he'll actually get that contract. We're probably looking at something more like 3 years, $40 million. But it's going to be expensive. It's going to be pricey. And Joe Thuney is somebody you can definitely build the interior of your offensive line around. And with what we have going on at the other spots in our interior line, this would give us somebody a little more overpowering, and really, really good to help Posick, who is solid but not overpowering, and Damian Lewis, who is working on heading in that direction. So those are the two really expensive and obvious options. Like, everybody understands that Brandon Scherff and Joe Thuney are two of the best guards in the league right now, and you would definitely want to go get them, but it's expensive. So let's look down the rest of this list and see if you can find anything else you like. J.R. Sweezy, don't want to bring him back again. I'm tired of the retreads. Elijah Wilkinson, not a good player. Mike Iupati, I mean, the fact that he's actually listed here kind of tells you a lot about what you can expect from the rest of this free agency class, because everyone below him is actually making less money. Forrest Lamp is a little bit interesting because I liked him in the draft, but he has not been a very good player for the Chargers since he got there, so probably not. Osamili is coming off a major injury. I don't know if I want to mess with that unless it's super cheap. DJ Fluker is going to be a free agent again, but again, I'm just tired of retreads. Dan Feeney is a little interesting, but Pro Football Focus really doesn't like what he's doing. So if you want to find a sleeper, the only guy who stands out to me would be the other Patriots guard, Jermaine Eluimunor. Maybe I pronounced that right. Probably not. Who cares? This is a guy who has played tackle and guard for the Patriots in his career, and I kind of like what he's brought so far. Pro Football Focus ranks him just below 69, and as near as I can tell, this guy has actually played some pretty solid football, not only at tackle, but at guard. So he's got some versatility, which is nice. He's kind of like BJ Finney, except hopefully he'll actually be good. And Jermaine Eluimunor, I promise I will pronounce his name right if we sign him in the future. This might be a sleeper replacement for Mike Iupati, somebody you can get for $5 million a year or $6 million a year, and then he ends up being really good for you. So if you want to pinch your pennies and save a little money at this spot, I kind of like this guy. But he's the only one that stood out to me after taking a look at this upcoming free agency class. So that takes us to the end of free agency. Finally, I want to spend a little bit of time going over the 2021 draft class and seeing what our options are here. So if you take a look at the big board on thedraftnetwork.com for offensive tackles in the upcoming 2021 draft, you'll see obviously the big time blue chipper Sioux. He's at the very top. You're never going to get him. You got Christian Darrisaw near the top as well. You're not going to get any of these top guys. All these guys are likely to go in the first round. You're going to have to go down a little bit below that in order to find guys you have a chance at. The first guy who seems like he might have the opportunity to fall to us in the bottom of the second round, which is where our first pick will be, would be Daniel Filele. And this one's a very interesting prospect to me. He's the left tackle for Minnesota, the Golden Gophers. He's 6'8" and 400 pounds. So right away, I'm seeing massive boomer bust potential for Daniel Filele. And if you take a look at his profile on draftnetwork.com, they list him as an insanely good athlete for his stature. So he's extremely strong and extremely quick for somebody who's his size. If you take a look at his cons, he has technical issues with his game because he hasn't played football as long as a lot of other people have. It says that he has a lot of technical lapses in his game that need to be tended to, and they believe they will be easy to clean up. Well, if you're a fan of Mike Solari, which I am, one of our offensive line coach, you're going to have some belief that he can take a player like a Filele and turn him into a quality left tackle in this league. So he's the first guy that sticks out to me. And interestingly enough, if you take a look at Tankathon.com and you take a look at their big board for offensive tackles, they actually have Daniel Filele falling to the third round, near the middle to bottom of the third round. So it seems very likely to me then that we would have an opportunity to draft him. Another guy that I like who's listed here would be Jackson Carman. He's the offensive tackle for Clemson, 6'5", 345 pounds. And the interesting thing about him is that both these websites that I primarily use for draft stuff are in agreement. Jackson Carman is listed as a bottom of the second round prospect on the Draft Network. He's also listed as a bottom of the second to top of the third draft pick in Tankathons.com big board. So Jackson Carman, the offensive tackle at Clemson, very likely to be available at our second round pick. Could be a nice pickup. Obviously, coming from Clemson, I have a lot of trust that he knows how to play against good competition. Other than that, there's going to be some disagreement across big boards. For instance, the Draft Network has Dylan Raduns from North Dakota State listed as a top second round pick, but the Tankathon big board has him listed at the bottom of the second round. So it really just depends on how these last few weeks of college football go, whether or not he can move his draft stock up or down. And there are probably a couple other players we'll have a chance at here, like Walker Little, according to the Tankathon big board, is going to be available to us. I would love to get a Stanford left tackle. Those guys seem pretty legit to me. And obviously, they just beat the crap out of my Huskies on the ground less than a week ago, so I have pretty strong memories of that. But Walker Little is also listed way down in the middle of the third round on this board, so I don't know if he's that kind of prospect. It's just going to kind of depend on what happens to Stanford's to his draft stock after the college football season, excuse me. All right, so that's going to take us to taking a look at some of the prospects at guard for the 2021 draft. Again, this is going to be a quick look. I will definitely be taking a much more intense look at a lot of this stuff in future weeks because, well, the closer we get to the draft, the more information we're going to have. But the top guard prospect this year, according to Draft Network, is Wyatt Davis. He's out of reach. You've got the USC guy, Vera Tucker, out of our reach. The Oklahoma guy out of our reach. You get down to the second round, you do pull a couple of guys from Ohio State and Tennessee and Alabama. I like getting guys from those schools. It seems to me that they're more prepped to play against top-level competition because they're playing against top-level competition in college as well. And if you take a look at the Tankathon big board, they have some consensus here. They like Trey Smith as a low to mid second round pick. They like Duane Brown as a mid to upper third round pick. And Josh Myers is a mid third round pick. So we have some consensus around those three guys. We obviously had a lot of luck pulling Damian Lewis out of the draft last year. He's been our best rookie by far. So if we could add another blue chip guard in the mid to upper draft rounds, I think one of those three guys would make a lot of sense. If we could get the guy from USC, because this draft board actually has him falling to the middle of the second round, that would be nice as well. But I think it's more likely than not he goes before we're able to pick. And that's going to basically sum it up. I think that's as much as I can say about the draft at this point in time. Again, as the draft approaches, I will be taking a much, much deeper dive into these prospects, but that's kind of just a preview of what you can expect from me going into 2021. With that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for watching this long video. It's been an interesting deep dive into the future of the left side of the offensive line for the Seahawks for sure. Hopefully, we can come out of it with a quality pair of players to man the left side of our line going forward. All right, streams later. Peace out. Go Hawks. Hope you come out and watch. And yeah, we'll see what happens.